I should have listened to my mother. Those were the first words that came to my mind when I saw it. A small, ugly doll, stuffed inside the folds of an old kitenge fabric. It wasn't like the dolls children played with. It was stiff, made of some rough material, and worst of all, there were needles piercing its tiny body. My hands shook as I held it. Something about it made my stomach turn. I had found it by accident while cleaning. It had been years since we moved into our new home, and I had never thought to check the gifts we received back then. I was excited when we first got here, our first house as a married couple. Kato and I were happy, hopeful. The neighbors welcomed us warmly, bringing gifts, so many gifts. Some were practical, like kitchenware, while others were decorative, like the kitenge fabric where the doll had been hidden. I didn't question anything then. I was too caught up in the joy of our new life. Now, as I stared at the doll, a cold realization settled in my chest. For years, I had struggled to have a child. No doctor could explain why. But now, looking at this cursed object, I couldn't shake the feeling that the answer had been here all along. And someone had put it here on purpose. I remember the day we moved in like it was yesterday. The house was new, fresh, smelling of paint and possibility. Kato was already talking about the little improvements he wanted to make, a bigger garden, a sitting area outside. I was just happy to finally have a place we could call our own. Then the neighbors started coming. One by one, they knocked on our door, smiling, welcoming us. They brought gifts, expensive ones. A gold-colored wall clock, imported chocolates, high-quality kitchen knives. I was surprised at how generous they were. We had never met them before, yet they treated us like family. One woman, an older lady with a bright headscarf, handed me a folded piece of kitenge fabric. "For your home," she said with a warm smile. "May it bring you blessings." I thanked her, not knowing that inside that fabric was something meant to do the exact opposite. Looking back, maybe the kindness was too much. Too perfect. But at the time, I only saw it as a blessing. The first year of marriage was filled with excitement. We talked about having children almost immediately. We picked out names, discussed how we wanted to raise them. But as time passed, nothing happened. At first, we didn't worry. These things take time, we told ourselves. But after a year, then 2, then 3, the worry crept in. I went to the doctors. They ran tests. Everything seemed fine. Kato went too. Same result. We were both healthy, yet the child we dreamed of never came. It wasn't long before people started whispering. Family members started suggesting I see traditional healers. My mother, who had always warned me about jealousy and evil intentions, told me to be careful. "Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend," she said. "Be careful who you let into your home." I should have listened. Finding the doll changed everything. I took a picture of it and sent it to my mother. Within minutes, she called me, her voice sharp with fear. "Nia, where did you find that?" "It was inside an old fabric someone gave me when we moved here," I said, my voice shaking. She didn't hesitate. "You need to get rid of it. Now. But not just anywhere. You need to find someone who knows how to handle these things. That's not just a doll, Nia. That's a curse. A curse." The word sent a shiver down my spine. I had never been a superstitious person, but deep down, I already knew my mother was right. There was something wrong with that doll. Something evil. I showed the doll to Kato when he got home. He frowned, rubbing his chin as he stared at it. "You think this has something to do with?" He trailed off, but I knew what he meant. Our years of waiting. Our unanswered prayers. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I don't want to take chances." We decided to seek help from Baba Omori, a well-respected elder known for his wisdom in spiritual matters. When he saw the doll, his face darkened. "Who gave you this?" he asked. I told him about the old woman, the bright headscarf, the warm smile. He nodded slowly. "This is not an ordinary gift. Someone wanted to harm you. He told us to prepare for a cleansing ceremony. This thing must be burned," he said. "And your home must be purified." I didn't argue. I just wanted it gone. The night of the cleansing, Baba Omori arrived at our home just before sunset. He carried a small bag filled with herbs, oils, and a clay bowl. Kato and I watched as he moved through the house, chanting prayers under his breath. He sprinkled a mix of water and crushed herbs at every doorway and window. "Whatever evil was brought into this home," he said, "it must leave tonight." The doll was placed in a fire pit outside. As the flames consumed it, a strange, sharp wind blew through the yard. The air felt heavier, as if something unseen was being forced out. I held Kato's hand, squeezing tightly. Baba Omori continued to pray, his voice growing stronger, commanding whatever curse had been placed upon us to be broken. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the wind stopped. The air lightened. Baba Omori turned to me with a reassuring nod. "It is done." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I didn't know if things would change overnight, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. The days after the cleansing felt different. The house was lighter, as if an invisible weight had been lifted. I started sleeping better. The nightmares that had haunted me for years, dark figures, whispers in the night, were gone. Then something unexpected happened. One morning, I woke up feeling sick. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion. But when the nausea didn't go away, my mother insisted I take a test. I held my breath as I waited for the result. 2 lines. I was pregnant. Tears filled my eyes as I showed Kato. He pulled me into his arms, his body shaking with silent sobs. "After all these years," he whispered. "It's finally happening." I looked around our home, the same place that had once felt cursed, now filled with a new kind of energy. Maybe, just maybe, we had finally been set free. Pregnancy changed everything. After years of disappointment, fear, and uncertainty, I was finally carrying a child, a miracle after what we had been through. The days after the test were filled with cautious joy. I kept waiting for something to go wrong, but as the weeks passed and the doctor confirmed that everything was progressing normally, I allowed myself to believe that this was real. Kato became even more protective, watching over me at every moment. "No stress," he would say whenever I tried to lift something heavy or even when I spent too much time cooking. He had always been supportive, but now there was a new tenderness in the way he cared for me. He made sure I ate on time, insisted I rest whenever I seemed tired, and kept reminding me that I was not alone on this journey. As the months went by, my belly grew, and so did my excitement. Each kick and movement inside me felt like a reminder that something beautiful was on its way. But deep down, a part of me still worried. What if the curse wasn't truly broken? What if something happened to my baby? Those thoughts lingered in the back of my mind, refusing to let go completely. No matter how much I tried to push them aside, the doubt always found a way back. One night, as I lay in bed, I placed my hands on my stomach, whispering a silent prayer. "Please, let this child come into the world safely. Let this be the blessing we have waited for." One evening, just as the sun was setting, there was a knock at our door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and Kato was still at work. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Standing before me was the old woman who had given me the kitenge fabric all those years ago. Her eyes flickered over my belly, and a slow smile spread across her lips. Her presence sent a cold shiver down my spine, but I forced myself to stay calm. I see you have been blessed, she said, her voice smooth, almost too gentle. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. Something about her presence unsettled me. Yes, I said carefully, placing a protective hand over my belly. By God's grace. She nodded, her smile never fading, but there was something in her eyes, something calculating. Blessings can be taken away just as easily as they are given. Be careful. I stood frozen as she turned and walked away. I watched her disappear into the distance, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. What did she mean by that? Was it a threat? A warning? That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities. Had she come to remind me of what she had done? Or was there more to it? After the old woman's visit, the nightmares came back. Dark shadows whispered in my dreams, their voices hissing words I couldn't understand. I would wake up covered in sweat, heart racing. No matter how many times I told myself it was just my imagination, I couldn't shake the fear that something was still lurking in the background, waiting for the right moment to strike. Kato noticed my restlessness. It's just your mind playing tricks on you, he assured me, pulling me into his arms. Nothing can touch us anymore. I wanted to believe him, I truly did, but deep down, I knew better. Evil doesn't just disappear, it waits. The joy of carrying a child was soon replaced by fear when complications arose. I started experiencing unbearable pain in my lower stomach, and some nights I could hardly breathe. The doctors told me to rest, but nothing seemed to help. The discomfort grew, and I began to wonder if this was a test, if I was being made to prove how much I wanted this child. My mother came to stay with us, preparing herbal remedies and praying over me every night. She massaged my swollen feet, made sure I ate well, and whispered words of encouragement. This child will be born, she said firmly. No one can stop that. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, something, was trying. The pain would come and go, but it was always worse at night. Each time I closed my eyes, it felt like something unseen was pressing down on me, trying to take what was mine. One evening, as the pain became too much to bear, my mother made a decision. We need another cleansing, she said. Something is still clinging to you. Baba Omori returned, bringing more herbs and oils. This time, the ritual was more intense. He prayed louder, anointing my head, my belly, every corner of the house. He moved from room to room, muttering words I couldn't understand, shaking his head as he went. There is still something here, he murmured, his eyes scanning the shadows. The moment he finished, a loud crack echoed through the room, like something breaking. Then, silence. And just like that, the pain disappeared. My body felt light for the first time in months. My mother placed her hands over my belly, tears in her eyes. You are free now, she whispered. 9 months after the curse had been lifted, I went into labor. It was a long and painful process, stretching into the early hours of the morning. Sweat covered my skin, my body shaking with exhaustion, but I pushed through, determined to bring my children into the world safely. Then, finally, after what felt like an eternity, I heard it, the first cry. Then another. 2 perfect little boys, their cries filling the room, proved that we had won. Kato held them close, his face streaked with tears. They are ours, he whispered. Nothing will take them from us. A week after the twins were born, I saw her again, the old woman. This time, she didn't smile. You broke it, she said, her voice laced with something close to anger. But curses don't just disappear. They return if you let them. I stood my ground, holding my children close. You have no power over me. She stared at me for a long time before nodding. Then prove it. And just like that, she walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I watched her go, feeling something shift within me. I was no longer afraid. Whatever she had tried to do, she had failed. My family was safe. The years that followed were filled with joy, love, and the laughter of my sons. The nightmares never returned. The house remained filled with light. But I never forgot. I learned to be careful. To pray. To protect my home and my family. Because in this world, there is good and there is evil. And sometimes, the most dangerous things come wrapped in kindness. The curse had been broken, but the lesson remained: not all gifts are blessings.